Live streaming is on.
Oh my Lord.
That hurt.
Yeah, that was. I mean, I'm telling you, man, this is the nerdiest. This is the nerdiest software. Well, I think people are watching them though, right? So, Philip, welcome to Recent Tartarians. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, play your anthem, man.
Recent Tartarians. Actually, you know what? I should find that. Someone did make me a new Recent Tartarians thing. I should play it for just a second.
What's this thing called? What's this thing called?
Hey everybody, welcome to Recent Tartarians. We're like a podcast for real now with Philip. This is pretty good stuff. Well, yeah, there's a bunch of new stuff going on if you guys haven't noticed. So I should open up the live page just to see. There's probably some chats happening right now. Yep, there's some chats. Yes, Twilight Mist, you're catching us live, and Philip's with me right now in Russia while I'm in Connecticut. It's pretty crazy. Philip, how are you doing?
Oh, pretty much very good, but
Excellent.
The weather is changing, so it's getting colder and colder, and you feel yourself more Russian and Russian each day.
I'm pretty excited about that too. My being in Connecticut, like there's snow and stuff like that. Granted, I'm still wearing shorts, but like eventually, I'm pretty sure it's about to happen. The snow, it's going to change everything. This whole town is a Tartarian town that I'm in, and I've actually been kind of wandering around. I'll put some video out soon that looks kind of like some of the stuff you've been doing around Moscow, because everything here are Tartarian brick buildings. The building I'm in right now, this theater palace, it's supposed to be 200 years old, right? Built in a year, and it's all brick, and it's got basements, but of course, it's not like they have a basement floor that looks like a basement. It's just the first floor is indented into the ground. You know, I mean, if you were going to build a basement today, you'd build a basement, not just put the first floor too deep. So it's kind of interesting because here is another example. And then you ask the people around here their names. They're very, like that name sounds Georgian or Czech or Slavic or Polish. You know, like, oh, you guys are supposed to be New English. Okay, well, you know. But yeah. So what about you, man? What have you been seeing?
Well, I've been trying to have a vacation this year, so I went to Black Sea for a couple of months. So.
Excellent.
I had to split my vacation, in fact, but I had plenty much experience with the mud volcanoes and stuff like this. So I mean,
what was that like in the Black Sea? Did you see anything good? I'm messing with these lights a bit.
A couple of dolphins, in fact. I even touched a dolphin near the beach, so it's like swimming close to the people.
Wow.
Yeah, that was pretty impressive because to see such a big fish close to you. Not a fish; it's a mammal actually, but.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's crazy. Have you seen their X-rays where they have fingers and toes and everything else? Makes you wonder a lot about what happened with that.
Yeah, animals kind of like me, So a bunch of foxes and squirrels in the wood try to always, come closer to me. But it was very scary at a certain point because you just like turn in your head and you see something very black because I was figuring that the dolphins are like kind of gray and blue, like a little bit lighter than what I saw, because that one was black. I mean,
yeah.
So
maybe it was a porpoise, right? Because there are black porpoises that look a lot like dolphins.
No, they just said that this is a local one, so it's like it's not the one you see in the industry.
It was loud.
Yeah, that was.
I was trying to click on the live stream so I could get the chat window opening to see what people are saying.
People are saying that you have to tell us what the hell you guys doing, right?
Right. Yeah, totally. So I mean, it's pretty interesting. Like a lot of things have changed, obviously, in the last few months. I did the Spanish trip, and then you went to Crimea or the Black Sea. You saw a lot of interesting stuff. I think you're going to have, some things to say. I'm very curious what evidence you found. Do you think you found Tartarian evidence? Do you think you found Thracian evidence? Do you think it's the same thing? What do you think about the Phoenician link now?
I mean, what we saw actually is the combination of different, renovations. So it's like because the place is pretty much inhabited, very severe amounts of people living there, and people like turmoil of people. People visit this place. People
In this
have
video,
have a rest, and then they go home. So actually, a bunch of people making money on all these tourist events like architectural sightseeing stuff like this. So you don't just pick the trail you wanna go. You just go and suddenly visit something. Wow, that's a mud flood building, something like this. So wherever I went, I saw some evidence. So I mean, I figured that it was pretty much from underground. The source is definitely underground, not the dust or something that fallen from the sky, because we see stones and rocks inside this mud. So and that's the same thing I saw at the mud volcanoes, because it has different type of particles that are coming out of the volcano during the eruption, and the eruption will never stop until you have pressure. So I mean, that explains that we have like a certain period when the volcanoes could be filling the cities with the mud, and also that explains how the mud came to the mountains and the hills. So because the mountains and the hills eventually could have the eruption holes of this mud. So that's probably what I found out, and I'm pretty sure that I'm gonna expand on this, and try to prove more and get more proofs than that. I mean, I'm not saying that that's the only case, because I also found out that the other mining activity could also be related. That is called the hydraulics mining. I made a video about this like 3 years ago. It's like a hydraulics when you use water to mine for gold or any other metals. I mean, and it also can create the flow of mud. That mud that comes from out of nowhere and floods the city in a night or something. I mean, that could be a flash flood type of stuff, or something like a flow, and because it's like maybe even a dam could be related, because we see a dam and we see maybe somebody's mining, and all these byproducts could be washed away by the dam. So I mean, that could pretty much explain also some areas when we see a whole bunch of evidence of this mining. Mining is pretty much easy to see when you know how it looks in nowadays. So that's why I want to make a comparison video when you see the modern byproducts of that hydraulics mining and what we can see in Grand Canyon and the other places. I mean, so what do you think about it?
I think that's exactly what we need to do. I've been looking at a lot of at the same time. I've been going back and looking at a lot of the things that first introduced me to the same. You and me both grew up seeing this stuff, so eventually it just culminated in us having realizations about what this is. But now we have to go back and look at it again and get a deeper understanding of what it was that we saw. So I think looking at Peruvian and Mongolian, but particularly as I was in a lot of Peruvian circumstances where there were month-long landslides and it just crazy seasonal mud floods. I've been trying to figure out how mud floods are happening today and what happens afterwards, because the water, once the seepage, because of liquefaction, the water seeps up but it comes back down again. So the cars, the trucks, they get buried in dirt. The mud becomes dry and then it's not mud anymore. And that's a big part of what confuses people when they're looking at sedimentary levels. So I've been talking to some geologists that I went to school with. I've been trying to get more and more people interested. The bottom line is everyone's about Tartaria now. Like everyone's about it. No, everyone knows. I hear people talking. It was on Matic or something on like 60,000 live viewers. Someone was paying for the memes to be "Long Live Tartaria" over and over again. People are hearing about Tartaria. I mentioned to this group that I'm working with now, they're like, so what is your show about that you do? I'm like, Tartaria, have you heard of it? Like, yeah, actually I have. I'm like, what's going on? But they have all these parts where they don't get it. And the thing that made this kid laugh was mud floods. Star forts sounds funny because it's bastion forts are what they're familiar with. When you try to explain to them, like, that's not correct. And then you mentioned mud floods. The idea of the mud flood at first confuses them. But when you say, well, do you believe in mud? Do you believe in landslides? Do you believe in liquefaction? Do you believe in fracking? Do you believe there are problems and there's potential consequences to fracking? Do you think we're the first civilization to mine? Do you think that we're the first people to open the earth with explosives or worse? And as you start looking back, TNT and dynamite, which Alfred Nobel, the Peace Prize is from the guy who invented dynamite, but the Chinese had dynamite thousands of years earlier, and we now know the Chinese the Tartarian. So it's like, what's going on? There's too many links to everything. But yeah, what I've been looking into more and more is like, how do mud floods go down in real life, and how do we show people that they're happening today? Because they're happening today. They're happening in Mongolia. They're happening in Russia. And they're happening in Japan. They're doing a better job cleaning them up. But if you go to places like Peru and Africa, you can still see like the crazy amount of devastation. And yeah, just the amounts of potential records lost. Like, I forget right now, but like we were talking about Galveston, Texas a while ago, and Galveston, Texas is just insane because there was this huge Victorian mall that was the size of an airport, and it was completely wiped out and devastated by, some sort of a wind or rain hurricane disaster. And we don't know exactly what happened, but we do know there are hurricanes today. So the more we look into like weather phenomenon and how they go down, we can see like what went down and how much was lost that way.
Yeah, it's a certain filtration of the people who are gonna be refugees. I mean, if you have different weapons in weather weaponry, like you can have like a hurricane, you can have a hail storm, you can have tsunamis also can be modified, right? So everything is for certain needs. So is the mud flood, right? So it may be used for, as what I can say, for neutralization of many like things. First is like corpses. You neutralize. You don't have to bury corpses. Second, you can absorb all the bacteriological things that already exist in the place, like if you use some weapons or maybe poisons or some chemicals or whatever you could be using, right? So, and also it also preserves from spreading the radionuclides. So I mean, it's absorbing the radiation, so-called radiation. So I mean, it could be used to clean up the area. So you flood up the city and just clean up the area for the future people to arrive and to inhabit the area without any disease and stuff like this. And so it would be easier for them to live there after it.
This has been kind of a thought, do you think there's a certain amount of transhumanism that is planned or has happened before? If we start looking into bipedal hominids that exist at the same time, they were simultaneous, and then they were wiped out, some of them. It seems like if that's the case, then is that what's going on, that we're doing this again? Are we in a point now where they're going to maybe make New Zealand into one kind of population and then Canada into another? Is Brazil going to be a fusion, and then parts of Scandinavia become, Africanized, and then China become, like transhumanist, where we have wired membranes into people's brains, and we have vaccinations that, adenovirals that will change the way people's DNA works, will open and close sequences. And if that all happens, it's not likely that it'll all happen to everyone at once. It's more likely that it'll happen to some people some of the time. And other people, other things will happen. So if we have caste systems that are being developed because of these micro mud floods, we can already see how quickly information can be silenced, right? Like you saw, South Park is now banned in China as of this week because they made an episode about Winnie the Pooh being banned in China. They put Winnie the Pooh in jail, and everyone was upset. But like now, seriously, like because the government doesn't like the president looks like Winnie the Pooh, they banned Winnie the Pooh. South Park references this. South Park is banned. Now there's going to be an entire generation that will never hear of South Park in China. It's 1.5 billion people that will never. It's a complete pivot. So, it seems like that's where we're headed. Is resets is also sequestering people so that they can't communicate with each other across these divisions.
Yeah, of course. And the borders themselves are gonna be, some type of restriction points when you have some type of control areas, and those masses won't be allowed to walk and pass through. So probably what's gonna be boiling inside the area is gonna be prevailing in some type of nationality or race or whatever is gonna be staying in the place after the reset. So I mean, that's how we're gonna see all this shift in population, in migration, and this is what's gonna be preparing next maybe couple of decades, I think, because Trump already started to build a wall, so probably he knows something about who is controlling the world,
It's
right? So
not a star wall. If it was more like pointy, I think I'd be more people would be down.
it's good enough for holding the masses. I mean, if somebody gonna flow, he has all these transparent walls where they can shoot, they can do whatever, so yeah, they can protect. And this is what's gonna be helping the America to stay safe afterwards. We have this idea in the Hunger Games, right? When you have some sort of districts and nobody can visit one, the supreme one. So I mean, and this is what's gonna happen probably, because they preparing this idea, I think. And the FEMA camps inside the country is gonna help them to contain the inside of America.
Yeah, I mean, so this is an interesting and scary subject that a lot of people are worried about, right? Like we don't know what's going to happen, but it seems like there's a lot of preparation that's been done to make it possible for, if you look at executive orders in the United States going back to at least um, FDR, then you can see we have executive orders to conscript laborers, to force you to work, to take all of your fuel, your food, your house, your family, put them in camps. We used to have that if there was, an invasion, then it was if there was a disaster, a nuclear disaster, then there was if it was just any kind of disaster, an environmental disaster. Now there's, because of Katrina and the Brown, the situation in 2004, it's if there might be a disaster. So we could say a storm is coming, and we could start taking everyone's cars and put them in these machines that have been made that can just vacuum cars off the street and put them into trains and take them away and empty out the fuels. I mean, we've literally gotten to that point where there's this infrastructure, and you have to wonder who are the people that build these buildings, because there's people that build buildings for cities. They're the same people that build buildings for prisons as the ones that build malls. And so we have to think like they have a way of doing things. Like this is where the prison bathroom goes, and this is where the mall exhibit goes. And eventually you have these parking structures that all look the same, that if you wrap chicken mesh in, would make any sort of detainment facility a much better detainment facility than you might think it's not by accident. It's not some sort of a retro thought. Like it's not retrospective that they're thinking to do this. They're like, oh, we should probably make this work in case we ever have. And then you see all these movies that are zombie movies, and you're like, why is there such a thing about zombies? We have fears of sharks, we have fears of dinosaurs or whatever, but this fear of zombies is the fear of each other in the least civil circumstance. And often it has to do with some sort of a plague or disease that changes people. These days, they've even gone as far to say it comes from a failed vaccination or something like that, like in I Am Legend. But the end result's always the same. Like humans get scared, they start using whatever resources they have to defend their families from each other, and then they start warring, and then they put people in camps. And so this is a thing that I think we've been leaving out about the mud flood, is how much devastation in the aftermath was, because it seems like it was literally as bad as some of the pictures with people with swords in their metal suits, riding around. There's a lot of devastation because people didn't know what to do. I mean, Hunger Games might be a good, or Battle Royale, I think is the Japanese version, but like those are probably pretty good examples now when we look back at the pre-Joan of Arc period, where it was just devastation and maybe just gray skies, burning gray skies in the aftermath of these volcanoes going off.
Yeah, so-called volcanoes. In fact, most likely people figuring out that they are just the mining terracones. But
Yeah.
what I saw yet lately, I've been walking around in Moscow like this weekend, and we were filming some stuff, and I've heard a story about the plague outbreak in Moscow in 1787. So it's like the end of 18th century, and I was exactly at the cemetery of this plague site. So I mean, all the plague corpses were buried in that cemetery, and that was exactly place where Leonid Brezhnev lived. So he's like a Ronald Reagan type of guy, but the Soviet one. And also another two Soviet secretaries were living in his house. So I hardly believe that they didn't know about this, that their house, their construction or building is standing right in the front of this cemetery, and their kids will be, playing in this near the house in this park of the previous cemetery. So I mean, they knew that something was in Moscow. They knew somebody was buried here, but that was definitely not plague. But how can you explain a bunch of corpses buried in one place, right? With no no curves or whatever, how you call it, So
Yeah.
I mean,
No tombstones or labels.
yeah. Just
This is exactly what happened with Ben Franklin, right? A couple of years ago, Ben Franklin's house, there's a museum now, and they went underneath and they found like 16 bodies with like all of women and children. And they're like, oh, maybe he was like, he was a cadaver. Like maybe he was just he was doing he was getting bodies for experimentation because he wanted to save the world because he's Ben Franklin.
And also we have like fires also, right? And we have plenty of maps after the fires, and we have two more cemeteries in that place. And I've been checking out all the maps year by year, and saw that Germans had air photography at that area during the war. And also this map is downloaded at that website. So I saw some houses standing already at the place. I mean, this is ridiculous because no other plans showed that those houses were built before. And now you go there and you see two underground levels of each house, and those houses just standing on the previous foundations. I mean, this is ridiculous. Nobody has any evidence of constructions of those buildings, and people just guessing who built those houses. I mean, we were like 30 people walking around in this area for 7 hours, and we pictured each and every, filmed each and every mud flooded window, and looked inside, and went inside the shops and stuff like this. So I mean, it was a throughout exploration of this evidence, and each and every one of us truly believed that we saw evidence. And like, I mean, it even looked maybe crazy, so many people screwing around, and elite apartments in Moscow. So security guards were like thinking, like, what the fuck is those guys doing? But when you have a lot of people, it looks like in some tourist trip, and so it's like organized, and they're like, oh, tourists, okay, let him pass.
You should really start, like, my thing is like shorty shorts, and you always say when you get out of the car, where is the beach? It works like a charm. It's amazing.
Where's the museum, right?
Yeah. That's even better. Maybe. I mean, museums are scary. People like museums like to learn things, and they're if you're just trying to take a selfie, like they know you're not going to turn the camera around. You're just looking at yourself. Like that's what they expect.
But it looked
like,
crazy when you have like elite furniture shop, with a chair with a price of like $8,000 inside, and the tables like $20,000, and like couches around $30,000 and stuff like this, and each and every, like, hundreds and hundreds of square feet of this furniture, and around 20 people looking around in your basement. What the fuck is going on?
You should dress up like you should dress up like you work for them, and bring and bring in supplies, and then you could be like, you could have like, it's like supplies, you know, and like the element of supplies, like it would probably work. No one would even know what you were up to. It'd probably work. I don't know. I mean, in general, like you seem to know what to do now is just go there. And like at this point, I think more and more people know what's going on because they're hearing about this thing. There's a movement, man. There's like tens of thousands of people that are talking about Tartaria, at least all over the world, you know? And so, I mean, I think what you're going to find more and more is like they're seeing that you're not trying to interfere with them. That has been kind of the biggest thing in your some of your videos. It's pretty funny. People are like we gotta stop this guy. Like all these security guards are like freaking out. Like, who's this guy behind the building, man?
I'm not so risky, you know. I won't risk my
yeah.
showing my ID to someone is not very good. I think
You're not doing anything wrong, but like, you know, you notice that there's basements and they're covering up, like a building's been stuccoed. This is the same thing happening here though, right? There are buildings here where they asked about some of these buildings in this area. They're like, well, could they get this building to be made an antique, historical landmark? And they're like, no, we're doing everything we can to avoid that because that would mean that we can't do anything with the building.
Yeah,
so I think it's a huge thing about like Russia, especially, is there's a cover up about the buildings because they don't want to use their ability to fuck with them.
It's like 100 meters from the Kremlin. I'm walking towards my office and I see like a brick wall and an excavator or somebody, workers here, and like they see this brick wall underground and they're like, dude, what the fuck should we do with it? And when I returned, they already poured concrete on it. So it's like,
yeah, you're doing it, man. That's the only reason.
And now you have a little park, little benches there, like little passages, and a bunch of design like grass and some bushes, and so
they cleaned it up nice.
Nobody cares because you don't want your because it has like a restaurant close by, and they had like a summer terrace there. If you probably called some historians or an archaeological team there, they probably lose some money because they should be removing their terrace during the summer. So it's always the money, and that's why I think the mining is one of the main reasons what we see is happening, because definitely they don't need us as as a resource. They need us as a human resource, which is containing and conserving and preserving their equipment, working for them and stuff like this. I mean, we are the labor force, and probably somebody is using us for some rituals and stuff like this. I mean, but that's not in general. In general, we are needed to be some human labor resource, and what they need from our place is precious metals, like different mud fossils and stuff like this, that maybe we don't even use them, but they just take it from us. And maybe water, maybe something else, who knows? So this is my point. And mining explains a lot, because everything's supposed to be follow the money, and you find the mining.
This was like that the L. Ron Hubbard book and movie with John Travolta, Battlefield Earth, right?
Yeah, of course.
And they're taking resources, but they're like a more advanced civilization that's being kind of ignored. And it's funny because we're so used to doing that. We do that to take oil from one country or another.
Exactly.
That, but like to have it done to us, we're like, hey, that's against the rules. We're supposed to be on top. But yeah, I mean, it's very plausible. And I mean, earlier in the mud flood group that we were, I think Victor Boog posted about the noble origins of the Tartars, which it was like in a book from the 1800s. Holbeck wrote. Let me see if I can actually. Is it really hard to I guess I'll just read it. It's like Holbeck wrote that which we can call common sense is the most uncommon of the senses, and that according to the light thrown up by the philology of Max Mueller, this tribe, the Aryans, or the noble tribe, are the fathers of the terrestrial civilization, spoke a language called Sanskrit, and lived no less than 10,000 years ago. About the time that they became half civilized, a great disturbance of the race, causing the people of the now Gobi in the Atlas Mountains. So there's that earthquake to Atlantis. This dispersed the tribe, giving way to some of the fiction of the flood of Noah's Ark and so forth. So in other words, they're saying that Noah's Ark is like is a half truth. And apart from this, the people went to Europe and another went to the Hindustan, and they had a climatical change which led them to becoming the civilization that spread to the Chaldeans, Persians, Egyptians, and Greece. And so the forefathers are the Tartars that become it's like they lived in a land in a country called Tartary, is at the very top. So this is in Voltaire, Frederick the Great, Jefferson, Franklin. They're all talking about it, and at the very end of it, you see the best part is that the country name is right there, is Tartary. So it's like, I mean, we're getting to the point where it's like every source we have is cited. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, and somebody's trying to pull the blanket on himself. And I mean, those Chinese historians, what are they doing right now is just trying to make China a new capital of previous Tartary, and they want to just pull all the history to China and make the China great again. And this is what's happening right now.
Well, this is what they're doing in Brazil too. And the damage, when it's done, it'll be too late. That's the thing. When there's no more Uyghur people, which is the funny, also in that South Park episode, they go as far as to mention the kids are not able to talk about issues because they're making a show that the Chinese might see. So they talk about how they might give a kid an organ transplant. Like, oh, we can't mention that because the Chinese are harvesting organs from the Uyghur people. But they say, oh, it doesn't matter who. So it's like they're pushing for people around us to know what's going on. But if they're all wiped out, then what's going to happen? And Brazil just burned down the libraries that proved the Galatian link that Martin in Flat British has been talking all about. The Galatian link to the Aboriginal tribes of Tartary and the Aru Khan, right? Because Araku Khan, the Iraq Khan. It's like, so they've always said Amerigo Vespucci was the guy who started the name of America. Giorgio Vespucci is Amerigo, but it's more likely the tribes that were down here that were named after the gods of the Mayans, and who were probably real people with a name like Khan. So they're Tartary kings, and there was a Tartary king named Amaru, and there's a tribe called the Amaru Khans. So everywhere you look.
Yeah, different depictions what we can find in ancient books about the kings and stuff. And what I found is like, for example, we had a king of Florida and a king of New England, right? So, and they look totally Caucasian, but they had all this Indian stuff on their heads. So it's like, I mean, there's definitely something going on in this, ancient noble lines, and all this story about the Hansa and Venetia and Hanseatic Union and all this genius merchant society, and what we also see in the Netherlands when we see the revolution, the first revolution. So I mean, they tell us a bunch of stories, but it all doesn't match up if you research the mudflood, because everything is falling apart after you realize that they were lying to us, and we had something that was type of a united civilization, right? So probably what we see as what we find as Tartaria is one of the biggest parts from that previous civilization, and probably it was hanging until the end of 18th, beginning of 19th century, but it was swallowed by such countries as China, Russian Empire, and India and Iran, right? So, and the biggest part was Turkey, of course, because Turkey began swallowing even some parts of Europe. You know it because they came up to Balkans, right? So they probably contained each and every country up to Spain, like Algiers, Morocco, low part of south part of Spain, Portugal, right? You've been to these places this year, so what do you found? Did they have a big influence?
Oh my gosh, it's so great. Okay, so much stuff that I've been thinking about Spain. There's like, I mean, obviously there's like a good documentary that has, worth of material that can be uncovered. But while I was there, they found this Celtic Iberian Stonehenge that had been uncovered by water. And in the meantime, I'd been to all these other sites which had been uncovered in the last year to 5, because I'd been to Spain already in the north and I'd seen all this stuff in the north, but in the south, they're finding all these mineral water spring systems that were used by the Moors to keep under siege. But you go further back and you find out that these buildings weren't built by the Moors. In fact, the Moors made the smallest repairs using these very, very small bricks, but the very, very, very old buildings are these giant stones. So the Celtiberian people could move these much bigger materials, and it's the same story everywhere. Like, it's like newer people are smaller and they're using smaller materials to patch this stuff. But then there's places like Lorca. So Lorca is actually named Helio-Orc, which is like Orcan is, orchestra, or, like the Greco-Tartaric Slavic root for organization, and Helios for sun. So you have the sun city. And so this city was an Egyptian city, supposedly. And before that, it was Agaric. And so the Agaric were a people that I had never really found much information about before. But I'd luckily met some anthropologists in Spain that I translated their books from Spanish, and I put some information together that basically talks about a Denisovan Neanderthal people. Like they're, as far as I can tell, a separate hominid, which is the craziest part. But if not, then they're at very least they've mixed in with humans. Because what's going on in South Spain is you've got the Elvis pelvis, you've got the Heidelbergensis, and you've got an entire different group of humans which are still bearing their own. But there you would have like a more increased Neanderthalic clan, and it seems like that's a big part of South Europe, is that there's Neanderthalic clans in Malta and in Spain and Portugal. But when you get to the middle of Spain, that's where everything's Roman, and the Roman parts of Spain are filled with aqueducts and aquifers. And this is the other thing that's kind of weird about Spain. It made me realize that Europe is Spain 500 years ago was the way Europe is today, in the sense that it's made up of a bunch of places that are being forced to be called one place. Spain doesn't want to be one place. Spain wants to be a bunch of places. The same way China wants to be 52 ethnic minorities. Like there's the Catalonians, the Galicians, the Basques. The Basques speak with Japanese grammar. They're all very, very different people. And the Roman part of the middle of Spain is decidedly Tartarian. They have every right to be. They have griffins all over every piece of stone they have. They have giant stones. It doesn't look like Moorish, Africanized South Arabic areas. It doesn't look like the super north, like Aragon Kingdom. It's its own thing. And it's also what's referred to as the Valley of the Fallen once you get to Guadarrama. And that's the craziest place because it's full of haunted zones, ghost stories. They said it was up to your knees in blood. Sound familiar? Like Revelation. And the Crusades went on. Every major war did until the anarchists in the 20th century. I camped out in front of this tuberculosis ghost town that was really creepy there by accident. I slept in this my van, and I woke up and I looked on Google Maps like, whoa, this is crazy. But it's also where the Franco tomb is, and that looks like something out of Star Wars. And I'm pretty sure like there's something going on with that, like these giant 30-foot hooded fallen angels in a pitch black cave. Like it doesn't look. It looks pretty old school. It doesn't, and there's these statues of giants out of stone. Granted, I'm sure Franco could have, with all the effort of Spanish architects, built some of that stuff. But that even goes more to the case of Tartarian architecture. I think Toledo is an architect, but he's named after the city of Toledo, which is decidedly Tartarian. And it's one of the other things about Spain is it was not. Everyone talks about the Spanish Inquisition, but nobody seems to think about the Caliphate and Cordoba having light in the 11th century, having power from power mills. The Arab areas were completely sophisticated. And it's starting to look like they got that from parts of Spain, that Spain already had these water wheel systems, had these power systems. And you go to Toledo and Sevilla, and they're considered the eighth wonders of the world, because they're these giant, again, airport-sized Tartarian buildings that have wings in every direction and have crazy bells and copper and bronze. And it's everything from the kinds of metals that they've made, which are as complicated as the alloys the Zildjian symbols are made of. Like they're very specific ways that they mix these particular metals, and then how they put them together and arrange them to make these harmonic patterns. And then you have these huge cities that are laid out around these buildings, and then they're all around these rivers, to the point that these river cities still live, still function today. And that's been another crazy part of Spain. Like, gosh, what's the name of that one city? Jeda. So Lleida, Jeda, like LL, like Lleida. Like Jeda's got a series of black bells that are all running still today, and they get their energy from the river that runs by it. And they're right in front of this giant cathedral. It's one of the biggest I've ever seen, and it's built in the 11th century, and all of the faces have been shot off in the 1800s, but it's starting to look like Spain has pushed really hard to hide all of this symbolism. And as the last 5 or 10 years have gone on, more and more tourism has led to the revealing of this stuff. Like everywhere you go, like in Valencia, there are just iron smoke chimneys, these giant brick chimneys that are everywhere. And you can see like there was an entire like coppersmith civilization that was very recently more powerful than the civilization that's in Spain today, but they've just built around it. So that's the other crazy thing about Spain, is all these buildings that are just abandoned because they just start building a new thing and they give up. And then there's a bunch of these new buildings. I wish Victor, we should get Victor to talk about this at some point, because he's going back to Spain. And Stellium also gets Stellium, because down in Denia, we saw some of these new Antiquitech buildings that are being put up. There's a couple buildings. There's this one building. It's twin towers with a funnel cone, downwards pointed, suspended between the two twin towers. And it was built for, tens of millions of dollars, at least. And then it was just abandoned, supposedly. They're not going to sell it. It's supposedly unfinished, although it looks finished. But it's just sitting there on the beach. It's this huge, it just looks like the only thing it could possibly be is a magical, technological, architectural weapon. Or temple, I guess, but an evil one. But yeah, I don't know. In general, is that what you're looking for in Spain? I mean, there's so many weird things going on in Spain. Like the whole country right now is crazy. Like you've seen what's going on with the country's government.
Yeah, it's just global trend to mess around with the government and stuff. Like, look what's happening in Hong Kong. We saw plenty of events here in Moscow, and probably more coming up in USA closer to the next election cycle. I mean, what we had at the last cycle was crazy, when the people were crashing monuments and stuff like this. So it's like, now we have eat the babies stuff like this. So I mean,
oh my gosh, yeah. So apparently, because I'm in the East Coast, somebody I know knows the brother of that Ocasio lady. So I really wanted to figure out if we could like interview her and be like, what are you gonna do to like stop the mud flood? And like if you've already got people telling people to eat babies, like what are we gonna do to stop people from eating babies? Do you have a plan? Are you against people eating? I think that would be kind of fun. But yeah, I mean, like this is a real thing. I mean, that's crazy. First off, there's a lady from Sweden who's like a doctor saying that. It's not just some kids from like hippies in LA or something. But the other thing I was gonna say is like I've met people in the world that are like they like compost their abortions. I'm not saying they're my friends, but like there are people that have done that and then put them into sustainable agriculture, so that people were eating quinoa and kale or whatever the heck that's from this stuff. It's like that's the kind of people that exist right now, in the more dark, like in changing your reality. And we need to be careful. And so it's funny though, because where does her mind go? Like it's straight to Moloch, straight to Baal, straight to eating babies. I mean, it's really scary. And the thing is, they didn't know what to do about her when that lady said that, because like it was pretty close to what they all probably want to say. So they're just like, it's a little too soon to be that open about it. But they want to get people on that level. I mean, it's scary.
Yeah, that's a media picture, and they showing us different, puzzle pieces of puzzle, but the whole puzzle, nobody sees the whole puzzle. The whole puzzle means reset. I mean, that's not what they're gonna do.
Well, you
So
saw the flag I made that was the yellow flag with the baby, and it says "Don't eat my baby."
yeah, you guys doing a bunch of crazy memes, and I like your memes. I
Yeah, insane in the membrane. The
mean,
membrane.
yeah, it was nice talking to you. I mean, it's getting kind of late. I hope we can have like a chat with Victor and you, and so we can use your software. I like it. I mean,
Doing my best to get this software working better. It's not technically mine. So Jitsi is a cool company that's working with us, and we're with Minds.com. Minds.com is a friend of ours. Like they're all of the stuff's encrypted. They can't see what we're doing, right? Like because you have your own personal password, so it just kind of goes through the system. Like they can't watch it, which is kind of cool. But we're now pumping it because of the license to YouTube. So anybody who wants to do chat videos like this for their channels, check out Minds and check out Jitsi, because like this is how we're doing it until we find something better. And I'll be trying to come up with more software that's decentralized that you can use on your own, because the whole thing about this is we need to keep doing this even though Google's trying to shut us down. Like it's flat out.
yeah, I've seen you had a struggle with the subscriber count, right?
Yeah, totally. They're throttling me like crazy. But I've got ideas. Don't worry.
I mean, I mean, this is not the only case I've seen recently. I mean, a bunch of people were telling me their stories, and I've seen them. The first what I see is they cut me from the search because during
Yeah.
the
You
vacation I
can't
was.
find me on a search anymore, right? Yeah.
So, you cannot just print Matplotlib and find my channel anymore.
Right.
Uh,
You try typing Xirtus, or try looking for like my 150,000 viewed video. Like it's just gone. Like you can't find it unless you know where it is.
and the second thing is you can find the only if you type Matplotlib, Philip Druzhinin and stuff like this. So some keywords are not yet in the list, I think. So they got all those top keywords like Tartarian, Starfort, Matplotlib, and so put me
Yeah.
way down below the search results. So
I mean, I'm super down to move to another platform. The only problem is like we still haven't figured out a replacement for AdSense to get content for free, because as long as people aren't, like, no offense to people who aren't like in love with supporting us like monetarily, but it is literally a lot harder to make content for free, because like, not that it's free, it's gratis. Like we're giving content, so we're trying to make it all available without you having to pay for it. And like, you continually can have it, but you have to understand, like, that makes it a little bit, it's like a hand behind the back. All right, we're gonna do it, but it makes it a little harder.
So the second thing is, the first thing is search. The second thing is they kicked the channels out of suggested videos. So and not subscribed people don't see my videos. It was like 60% of my views before, not
Right.
non-subscribed people. So the people
Right.
that are not subscribed is the new people,
Pause.
and they saw my videos, and now they don't see them anymore. So I mean, this is ridiculous, and this is happening to each and every channel that I checked during the September. So everybody was, sending me links, and I've been checking, and I see the same picture. So they cut us out of suggestions, they cut us out of search, and they cut us out of non-subscribed viewers.
Yeah, I wish I was good at Reddit or something, because I feel like Reddit people still click on links or something there, but YouTube is not. Like, you can't, if you look at your list, your suggestions are gone. You cannot use YouTube in any respect really for that purpose anymore.
Reddit has problems because it's already inhabited with some groups on a certain keywords also, and they have their own politics. They have their own trolls and the people who live there, and they're gonna hit you bad. So if you're not,
no, I've read the Lord of the Rings. Like, it is dangerous in Mordor. It's true. Like, they're trolls. I agree, but like no, like there is some other things we can do. Like all of these other systems that we can put things on, like BitChute is a really good system. I think it doesn't have the monetization, but you can still get people on DonorBox, which is what I'm using now, more than Patreon because it's cheaper and easier. And then also with crypto, and we're still trying to figure out an AdSense solution. I have some pretty good ideas. I think we can get something working. That's one of the reasons I'm trying to work with these guys. But I think that what we can get working is not the same as getting a full-on replacement for YouTube. So we can get stuff on YouTube, but or off of YouTube. It's more about having other sites like Stumble Upon has become Mix.com. Minds, I think everybody should get on Minds, bottom line. I think Minds is so far the most juicy social media platform. The way it works is there's 2 million people, so there's a lot less people, but none of them are bots. So it's all people like, Philip, and I, those are humans. And then when you want, you can actually promote yourself in a way that commercial companies can't. And if you like something, you can boost someone's post and they can boost your post, and you can actually get guaranteed views, and that's really useful. Because you can't do that anymore with Facebook. Your Facebook is maybe going to let a couple of your old friends see what you posted sometimes. So that's I'd say
that works actually, because I'm trying to explore this site, but you showed me today how to chat, and maybe I'll check out maybe more features here are useful, and there will
it's a lot like Facebook in the front page, and you can join the groups and you can find people to post things to. And BitChute, I think we should start putting all of our videos on BitChute, because BitChute's clean, it's torrent swarm based. And as time goes on, Ben is helping us work on the Foundry. The Foundry is going to be Tartary Nova's kind of front end client for data transmission. It'll be, I think someone had a better word than, what do they call it? They had a word. It's like an office suite, or it's like a library. It's going to be like a library, but with all the tools and stuff like that you can use. So we had one version, and now we're doing the version 2, and it's going to be a lot easier to use. You're going to be able to have unlimited data storage on it, and you're going to be able to see all the stuff that's related to Tartary. It'll be in an enclosed circle. And as time goes on, we're going to start trying to figure out how we can do some sort of a non-fungible token for advertisement, because that way you can put in front of each other's videos 5 seconds of your own clip or your friend's clip, and then that can be like, hey, if you saw this video that I'm uploading for you, you can see this other video. I think that way we can exchange each other's data. We can get away from Google. It's a little less trivial than it sounds.
Yeah, I think that was a good talk. Thanks a lot for contacting.
Yeah, man. Thanks a lot. I'll talk to you soon. Let's do it again.
See you later, guys.